Welcome back to the Black Mold of Grief. I'm Thomas Graves, and this is the B episode for this week, which is the more lighthearted stories. And they're stories that I want to take to heaven and share with my mom, because I do want my first conversation in heaven to be a conversation that brings her joy. So this is another one of those stories that I plan on bringing with me. And it is the time that I taught Cyndi Lauper how to make fajita. So, little backstory on fajitas, because it's critical to the story. The person who is credited for bringing them and introducing them into America is actually a woman in Houston named Mama Nifa, who had Nifa's restaurants. And her husband passed away in 1973, and she had several kids, and she was trying to make sure she could take care of them. So that's kind of how the fajitas were introduced into America, is through Mama Nifa. So that was 1973. And so by 1985, which is when Cyndi Lauper was having her first fajita, they hadn't really gotten out into the American cuisine the way they are today. So she had never seen a fajita, didn't know what it was. So what was going on is I was actually working for a catering company that did all the food for the Frank Irwin Center at UT campus, which is where all the concerts were and the basketball games, all kind of stuff. And up until that point, I had done a lot of the concessions and whatnot work, and there was a spot available to do all the backstage catering. And I really wanted that spot because it was kind of cool. But also, it was a long day. It was like an 18-hour day, so I could get a bunch of work in one day and knock it all out. So I finally earned the trust of my boss to get this slot. And so turns out the first one that I did for backstage was Cyndi Lauper. So I've been there since 6 a.m. and so around 4 o'clock or so, they're doing the team dinner with the crew and everybody. And it was fajitas. So there was this long buffet table with all the different chafing dishes, with all the different accompaniments and the different bowls of everything. And so I knew they were coming because they're supposed to be there at 4. And so I'm wanting to see Cyndi Lauper, but I don't want to act like I'm looking for her. So I'm just kind of standing there, kind of arranging stuff on the table to make it look like I'm staying busy. I didn't know it at the time, but Cyndi Lauper is really, really tiny. I mean, she used to wear a bunch of clothes and stuff and have her hair all big. And so I just pictured her taller and bigger. But this woman comes up first in line, and in my peripheral, I can see that she's like super, super tiny. So I'm not thinking it's Cyndi Lauper. And I'm just still kind of arranging stuff, trying to be available, but not being weird and looking at, for Cyndi Lauper. So as I'm doing this, she takes the plate and she looks at the first chafing dish, which is where the tortillas are. And she says to me, and I won't do her accent because I can't, but just picture her accent. And she says to me, "What am I supposed to do with that flat little bitty pancake thing?" And so I kind of see her, and all of a sudden, all these thoughts just start. I'm like, wait, that's Cyndi Lauper. And then Cyndi Lauper's talking to me. And who doesn't know what a tortilla is? Wait, Cyndi Lauper doesn't know what a tortilla is. And so I just am completely flustered. And so I'm thinking, okay, should I make the fajita for her? But if I do, then I'll be telling Cyndi Lauper she's not fit to make a fajita. And I don't want to upset Cyndi Lauper because I want this job for all subsequent concerts. And so I'm just kind of lost. And so I'm stammering around, and I said, well, it's called a tortilla. And so these are fajitas. And so what we're going to do is said, there's this long line here, and we've got 20 different ingredients. And so the goal is to get just a little bit of every ingredient on the table onto the flat little bitty pancake thing. And then we're going to roll that. And then you're going to pick up the flat little bitty pancake thing, and you're going to eat it. And so she was like, okay. And so I was like, all right. So because it was the whole crew, it's probably 50, 60 people. So we had this giant bowl of sour cream first. And because it was a giant bowl, we had to have a giant spoon so the spoon didn't fall into the sour cream and nobody could reach it. So she picks up this spoon and it's, this big and it is just mound of sour cream. And so I say to her, okay, that's a lot of sour cream. And you really want just a little bit on the flat Louis pancake thing. And so she goes, and it's just like, and then she leans into me with this big smile and wide eyes. She goes, like that? And I was like, oh my God, that's a lot of sour cream. And so, but again, I don't want to tell Cyndi Lauper. She doesn't know what she's doing. So I was like, okay, well, that's more than I would put on. And, the important thing to remember is that, we have another 19 ingredients that we have to get into this tortilla so that you can roll it and pick it up. So moving forward, we need to use less. And she's like, okay, so next bowl. Well, what is that? Well, that's guacamole. It's avocado. It's got onions, tomatoes. It's really, really good. So same bowl, same spoon, picks it up. Huge thing of guac. And I'm like, okay, but that's a lot. And you only want a little bit. And she's like, okay. And again, she looks at me and she's like that? And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is like horrible. But I can't tell Cyndi Lauper she's not fit to make a fajita. So I'm just scrambling because if my boss comes in and sees this, she's going to think I'm doing a horrible job. So I'm kind of stressed on all fronts. And so again, I'm like, okay, well, so now we have another 18 ingredients that we need to get into the little pancake thingy and then roll it and pick it up. So again, when we move forward, we want to use just a little bit of every ingredient. And she's like, okay, so next bowl. Well, what's that? That's pico de gallo. So it's tomatoes, cilantro, some onions. And she picks up the spoon. And I'm like, and you want just a little bit of this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is a disaster. And so this continues all the way down the line with shredded cheese and nacho cheese and refried beans and charro beans and black beans and rice and chicken and steak and, sauteed onions and peppers. And I mean, it is just, so she ends up with this plate that is just like a Mount Vesuvius of Mexican fajita ingredients that are just tumbling everywhere. And so she gets to the end of the line, and to her credit, she walks to her table, or one of the tables, and she didn't spill anything, which was impressive because it was a complete mess. And so she sits at the table, and I'm watching her, and she is just staring at this mountain of jumbled ingredients. And she starts spinning the plate to figure out what she's going to do with it. And that little pancake thingy was buried. There was no way she was getting to it. And so she spins it 3 times completely. And then she just kind of stares at it. So then she decides, okay, I'm going to take a bite. So she picks up her fork, puts it in this mound of stuff, pulls it out, and all she got was sour cream. And so I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. And so she eats a little bit of the sour cream. And of course, it's horrible to eat all by itself. So she kind of does this little grimace face and like, ugh. And so I was like, okay, great. Because now I can go ask her how it was. And she's going to say it was horrible. And then I can say, well, let me make you a fajita like I would make. And that can be my in to fix this situation. So I go over and I said, well, how is it? What do you think? And expecting her to kind of be, where she looks at me and she goes, it's great. And I'm like, no, it's not. Why are you being so nice? It's not. I mean, I appreciate you being nice, but it is horrible. Like, I saw your face. It's horrible. And I didn't have a plan for what to do if she said it was great, because I didn't think she would. So I just kind of stand there. I'm like, okay, well, I'm glad you enjoy it. And I just kind of walked off, and that's all she ate. Like, she didn't eat any more of this. And I don't know if, hopefully, she had some fruit or a granola bar or something in her dressing room. But literally, she didn't eat anything before that show. And so that has actually been a pivotal moment for me as a waiter, because I learned, okay, when it's somebody can't do that, it's not offensive to say, let me do this for you, because you're going to end up with that situation. And so moving forward, I ended up working in a bunch of high-end steakhouses, and anytime a guest looked a little nervous or they would mispronounce a wine or a steak or something, I would immediately have these flashbacks to Cyndi Lauper and this whole fajita debacle. And I was like, okay, I am not having this happen twice on my record. This is not on my watch. So I learned to actually start finessing a little bit and saying, well, let me go ahead and guide you through this. And, it's your first time. Okay. Well, yeah, I'll make sure you have a good experience. And so if you have had me wait on you before and you think I did a great job, you have Cyndi Lauper to thank for that, because she suffered so that I could become a good waiter. Levi is a producer out of Orlando, and he not only produced this track, but he's also the featured vocalist. Plus, he produced multiple other tracks on the album, and he brought a real current sound to the album that I would not have been able to do myself, and I'm grateful for that. And this particular version, I told him, just make it fun, crank the tempo up as high as it can go, and just bring a real hip-hop, fun, upbeat, uplifting energy to it. And his voice fits that. His tracks fit that. So there's a real joy to this version that just makes me smile.
I sort the memories I make at the end of every day. Scoop up the stack you like and tuck them all away. I pick one you won't want. Dig up the pain that's there. Grieve until it's gone, so I have more to share. In our first conversation in heaven, and I'm gonna bring you joy, and I'm gonna bring you joy. I don't have a doubt with the way I'm living now. I'm gonna bring you joy. I'm gonna bring you joy. Yeah, I'm gonna bring you joy.
Thanks again for joining us on the Black Mold of Grief. Next week, we're going to continue with the AB episode so that you can pick whichever one fits for where you are right now over the holiday season. But in the meantime, I hope something that I've said today in either of these episodes helps you bring a little more joy to your first conversation in heaven.